Imagine trying to build a massive skyscraper, but instead of letting this like 10,000-ton concrete foundation cure slowly over a few months, you blast it with industrial blowtorches to speed up the process.
Right, which sounds incredibly efficient on paper.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
sure, the structure looks huge, like incredibly fast,
Yeah.
but on a molecular level, that concrete is basically brittle.
Oh, entirely. It's compromised.
Right, so the minute you start adding the weight of the steel framing, the entire foundation just cracks and, crumbles under its own mass. And, well, that catastrophic structural failure is exactly what happens when human instinct takes over at the dog bowl.
Yeah, it really is.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a highly comprehensive stack of expert notes and transcripts today, and they focus entirely on the feeding, the nutrition, and just the lifelong care of the Newfoundland dog.
And, this is such a vital set of sources to unpack because when you're dealing with a giant breed, the margin for error is, well, it's razor thin.
Yeah, too.
I mean, we are talking about an animal that can grow to be the size of a full-grown human adult.
Okay.
So the biological stakes of that growth are just exponentially higher than with, like, a typical dog.
They really are. So our mission today is to completely upend how you look at the dog bowl. We're going to uncover how that metal dish on your kitchen floor is, well, it's actually the starting point for a Newfoundland's skeletal integrity, their joint health.
And their long-term comfort, too.
Yes, exactly. Their comfort across a decade-plus lifespan. Now, to be clear, we are not going to list off specific kibble brands or hand you a rigid feeding chart today. We're really exploring the underlying philosophy and the biological mechanics of fueling a giant body from puppyhood right through to its senior years.
Which is a philosophy that requires overriding some of our most deeply ingrained primal human urges, really, regarding how we nurture and feed the things we love.
Yeah, so true. But before we jump into those urges, just a quick disclaimer. This deep dive is for educational purposes only. If you ever have specific concerns about your dog's health or diet or behavior, you should, always consult your veterinarian directly.
Always.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a massive misconception out there that a bigger Newfoundland puppy is inherently a healthier, more robust puppy.
Oh, it's such a common trap.
Right. You look at a puppy with paws the size of dinner plates, and the immediate human instinct is, I need to fill this frame out as fast as possible.
What's fascinating here is how rapidly that specific mindset just completely destroys the animal's physical future.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because when you overfeed a giant breed puppy to, accelerate their growth, you are placing immense unnatural mechanical stress on bones and joints that are, well, they're still actively forming.
Right, it's not finished yet.
Exactly. A Newfoundland puppy's skeletal structure features growth plates, and these are basically areas of soft, developing cartilage at the ends of their long bones.
And if you just flood their system with excess calories, going back to the analogy, you're basically blowing a blowtorch on that curing concrete.
Precisely. You force the bones to grow much faster than the surrounding muscles and tendons and ligaments can actually support.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or even worse, an imbalance of minerals like calcium and phosphorus can cause those soft growth plates to calcify prematurely.
Which means the bone just stops growing.
Exactly. It stops growing normally, and the sheer downward mass of that oversized puppy causes the legs to literally bow outward under their own weight.
Well, that sounds incredibly painful.
It is, and it leads to permanent orthopedic deformities.
See, that drastically changes how you have to look at, the bag of dog food. You can't just grab whichever puppy food at the pet store promises the most protein or the fastest bulk.
Absolutely not.
You really have to rely on a giant breed-specific formula because, well, those are engineered to restrict that calcium intake, right? And enforce a really slow, highly controlled growth curve.
Yes. Because the primary goal during puppyhood isn't speed, it's steady structural integrity. The sources emphasize that you must monitor the puppy's body condition, not just, their overall size on a scale.
Because some are just naturally bigger.
Exactly. Some puppies simply have the genetics to be taller or longer than others. Size is not the metric of health. It is how the individual puppy's body actually feels to the touch, like the coverage over their ribs and their spine.
Which makes me realize how dangerous everyday habits can be during this phase. I think about training a new puppy. You're just constantly rewarding them, right?
Oh, yeah, the treats add up fast.
You give them a training treat for sitting, the kid slips them a reward, guests come over and hand them a biscuit. A treat seems incredibly tiny, but if we're talking about this delicate chemical equation for bone growth, Those treats are essentially uncontrolled variables.
They absolutely are. Those little rewards can completely derail the math of that slow, steady growth curve.
So every single bite counts.
Every single meal and every single extra calorie is directly contributing to the architectural integrity of the frame that this dog is going to have to, carry around for the rest of its life.
Right. And eventually that foundational frame finishes setting and the dog enters adulthood. So the massive metabolic demands of puppyhood just fall off a cliff.
They really do.
But the Newfoundland presents a really unique, almost deceptive challenge here. And I actually want to challenge the math for a second, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
If you have an adult dog that weighs 150 pounds, wouldn't an extra 5 or 10 pounds of fat be just like a drop in the bucket? I mean, why are the sources splitting hairs over a few extra calories for an animal the size of a bear?
It seems counterintuitive, I know. But it really comes down to the physics of joint strain. Those 10 extra pounds are not just static weight sitting on a scale.
Right, because they're moving.
Exactly. When a 150-pound dog stands up or walks or, jumps down from the back of an SUV, gravity and velocity multiply that mass.
Oh, I see.
So that 10 pounds of extra fat might translate to 40 or 50 pounds of sheer force grinding down on a single knee joint or a hip socket with every single step.
Wow.
And over months and years, that excess friction just completely shreds the cartilage.
So even a minor percentage of weight gain has an outsized mechanical consequence. But here's the real problem. The very thing that makes the adult Newfoundland so iconic, that majestic, thick double coat, it basically creates a literal cover-up.
Oh, it acts as a complete optical illusion.
The sources describe it perfectly. They say it's like trying to judge the physique of a human being who is wearing an enormous, fluffy, expedition-grade winter parka.
Yes.
You simply cannot see their true body shape underneath. You have no visual cue if they've gained 10 pounds or lost 10 pounds.
Which is exactly why relying on your eyes is a total recipe for disaster with this breed. Hands-on tactile checks become absolutely mandatory in adulthood.
So you have to really get in there.
You do. You have to physically push your hands through that incredibly dense undercoat and feel the rib cage. Feel the waistline and assess the muscle tone. Your veterinarian can actually demonstrate exactly what a healthy, lean, giant breed feels like, and you have to make that physical check a weekly habit.
Because I think people forget that a Newfoundland is naturally built for spectacle. They are already imposing. They already take up the entire hallway.
Right, they're massive by default.
Exactly. Once they hit adulthood, the food's job is simply biological maintenance, not building further spectacle. I like to think of their adult metabolism like a highly efficient freight train.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like it takes a massive amount of fuel to get that heavy train up to cruising speed during puppyhood.
Yeah.
But once it's rolling along the flat tracks of adulthood, it takes remarkably little fuel to keep it moving.
And any excess fuel you shovel into the engine just gets stored as completely useless cargo.
Yeah, exactly.
Furthermore, that maintenance feeding requires immense flexibility from you as the owner. You have to feed the specific dog standing in front of you.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a calm, low-key adult who spends 8 hours a day lounging on a cool tile floor. They do not require the caloric intake of a dog that is, say, actively doing water rescue training. You have to flex their bowl based on their actual daily life.
Which brings up a really insidious danger the sources call the silent calorie creep. Because that hidden weight gain under the parka rarely happens from one massive, obvious overfeeding mistake, right?
No, almost never.
It creeps in through the environment. It's the well-meaning kids dropping snacks under the dining table. It's the generous grandparent who just assumes one extra table scrap couldn't possibly hurt a dog that size.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at how this ties into the changing of the seasons.
Oh, right, because of the heat. It's pure thermodynamics.
Yeah.
That massive double coat is an intense layer of insulation. So when the summer heat hits, a Newfoundland's natural biological response is to drop their activity level as close to zero as possible, just to manage their internal heat load. They slow way down so they don't overheat.
Precisely. Now, if their physical activity and caloric burn plummet in July, but you continue to feed them the exact same volume of kibble and treats that you fed them in the freezing temperatures of January,
Oh, I see.
well, weight gain is an absolute mathematical certainty.
Calories in versus calories out, combined with the family dynamic that might be accidentally sneaking them extras. You really need agreed upon household rules, including a strict list of which human foods are outright toxic.
That is so critical.
Because if a giant breed consumes something poisonous, you aren't just waiting to see if they get an upset stomach. You are dealing with a massive volume of toxin that requires an immediate vet intervention.
And, shifting from slow metabolic dangers to immediate life-threatening ones is crucial when discussing giant broods. While weight gain is insidious and hidden, the unique anatomy of a deep-chested dog introduces the risk of sudden, catastrophic mechanical failure of the stomach itself.
Yeah, we are talking about gastric dilatation volvulus, which is commonly known as bloat.
Right.
Now, to be clear to the listener, the goal here is awareness, not living in a constant state of panic every time you fill the bowl. But my instinct as a dog owner would be to watch for traditional signs of sickness, like vomiting. However, the sources explicitly specify unproductive retching as the major red flag. Why is that specific distinction so critical?
Well, this raises an important question about the actual mechanism of bloat. Picture the dog's stomach like a heavy hammock, and it's suspended by ligaments inside their deep chest cavity.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If a dog consumes a massive amount of food and water very quickly and then engages in heavy physical activity, that heavy hammock can start to swing like a pendulum.
Oh.
Yeah. In severe cases, the momentum causes the stomach to actually flip and twist completely over on itself.
Wait, so it physically seals off both the entrance from the esophagus and the exit to the intestines?
Completely sealed off.
Wow.
The gas inside the stomach begins to ferment and rapidly expand like a balloon, but it has nowhere to go. This is why you see unproductive retching. The dog is desperately trying to vomit, but because the stomach is twisted shut, absolutely nothing can come up.
That is terrifying.
It is. As that gas expands, it crushes the vena cava, that's the main blood vessel returning blood to the heart, and it sends the dog into irreversible shock.
See, that completely explains why a slow feeder bowl isn't some magic shield.
Yeah.
People want to buy a raised bowl or like a puzzle feeder, and they assume they've solved the problem entirely.
They do, yeah.
But those products don't change the underlying anatomical vulnerability of that suspended hammock.
They really don't. Managing bloat risk requires a highly individualized strategy developed with your vet. Pacing meals, controlling water intake, and strictly enforcing rest periods before and after eating.
But regardless of prevention, if you ever witness that unproductive retching,
yes, combined with a swollen, drum-tight abdomen, severe restlessness, or sudden collapse.
it is a catastrophic emergency. I mean, you don't wait an hour to see if the dog settles down. You drive to the emergency clinic right that second.
Absolutely. It is a matter of minutes, not hours.
Okay, let's take a breath and step back from the emergency room for a minute. Let's look at the mechanical action of eating from another angle specifically. What happens after the food goes down and how that impacts the dog's exterior.
Right, the maintenance side of things.
Exactly. Here's where it gets really interesting because the sources point out a fascinating psychological trap owners fall into. The magic food myth.
Oh, yes. Treating the kibble bag like a cure-all.
Yes. An owner notices their dog has, like, a dull coat or flaky skin or a hot spot, and their immediate reaction is to go to the pet store and buy a much more expensive exotic brand of food. They try to use the bowl to basically fix an external issue.
While baseline nutrition is obviously required to grow hair, the actual health and condition of a Newfoundland's massive double coat is largely dictated by intense physical labor on the part of the owner.
Just brushing and maintenance, right?
Mostly, yes. A thick double coat traps dead hair, dirt, and moisture. If you don't physically brush out the dead undercoat, air just cannot circulate to the skin.
That makes sense.
And if a dog goes swimming and you don't use a high-velocity dryer to dry them all the way down to the skin, moisture gets trapped in that dense fur, bacteria breeds, and painful hot spots form.
Yeah, and no amount of expensive salmon-infused kibble is going to fix a bacterial infection caused by trapped moisture. I mean, the food might build the coat, but your physical labor is what actually protects it.
Exactly. And if a dog is experiencing persistent hair loss, severe itching, or skin odor, endlessly rotating through different food brands is just delaying necessary medical treatment.
Right, that requires diagnostics from a veterinarian.
Absolutely.
But, the physical reality of the dog interacting with their bowl creates another unique challenge.
Yeah.
The external mess. We really have to talk about the drool and just the sheer volume of water a Newfoundland displaces onto your floor.
They are notoriously messy drinkers. The drool increases heavily around feeding time, after drinking, or simply when they are just trying to cool down.
But the sources emphasize this isn't just an aesthetic annoyance where you have to, carry a rag around all the time. That standing water around the feeding station creates a very real physical safety hazard in the home.
Oh, it really does.
I mean, imagine a clumsy 80-pound puppy whose growth plates are still fragile, suddenly slipping on wet tile. Or a senior dog whose hind legs are already losing muscle mass doing the splits on a drool puddle.
That is exactly how a dog tears a cruciate ligament. And that requires massive, expensive surgery and months of rehabilitation.
Yeah, brutal.
You have to actively plan for traction, using heavy-duty absorbent mats, and ensuring the floor around the bowls provides really secure footing.
That wet, messy mouth isn't just an external hazard, though. The sheer mechanics of a giant breed's jaw creates a massive blind spot for internal pain. And this becomes incredibly critical as the dog shifts into its senior years.
Yes, the aging process changes everything.
I think of a senior Newfoundland like a preserved classic car.
Yeah.
You are no longer feeding them for high performance or, adding miles to the odometer. You are feeding them entirely for preservation, dignity, and mitigating wear and tear.
And preserving that dignity has to start with their teeth. A giant breed has incredibly powerful jaw muscles, which means they can often power through dental pain without whining or crying at all.
So they just hide it.
Yes, because they are so stoic, owners often miss the signs of severe decay. There is a pervasive myth that foul, rotting breath is just normal dog breath. It is not. It is a flashing warning sign of necrotic tissue and infection, which can actually enter the bloodstream and damage their heart and kidneys.
Wow. Since they hide the pain so well, what mechanical changes should an owner actually be watching for at the bowl?
You really have to watch how they physically interact with the food. Are
Yeah.
they suddenly eating much more slowly? Are they dropping kibble out of the sides of their mouth while they chew?
Okay, so mechanical struggles.
Exactly. Do you notice them shifting the food over to chew exclusively on one side of their jaw? Or are they entirely avoiding hard kibble and only eating softer bits? Those subtle behavioral shifts are often the only indicator that the act of eating has become just agonizing.
And as we talk about aging, the way their body processes that food changes dramatically too. The sources are adamant about monitoring a senior dog's body mass. If a senior Newfoundland starts experiencing unexplained weight loss or muscle wasting, you can never just shrug and say, well, they're just getting old.
That is a critical error. Sudden weight or muscle loss in a senior is almost always a mechanical failure of the organs, like the kidneys struggling to process protein or an interaction with new medications they are taking for joint pain.
And so the body just starts cannibalizing itself.
Essentially, yes. The body starts cannibalizing its own muscle mass.
Which means a senior diet has to be incredibly precise. You don't just grab a bag because the marketing department slapped the word senior on the label.
No, not at all.
You have to work with your vet to formulate a diet that specifically supports their aging kidneys, eases their digestion, and manages their unique inflammation.
And the complexity of managing these highly specific, shifting needs across a decade, from calcium limits in puppyhood to kidney support in the senior years, it naturally drives owners to look for systemic solutions. They want a silver bullet to optimize health.
Which brings us to the modern diet trends, right? The raw food movement, homemade diets, grain-free formulas, and just the endless shelves of joint supplements. Because these trends are heavily marketed as natural or ancestral, people assume they are inherently harmless to experiment with.
But experimenting on a giant breed without a net is incredibly dangerous. The margin for error is simply too small.
Right.
If you try to formulate a homemade raw diet and you miscalculate the bioavailability of the phosphorus, you could permanently damage a growing puppy's skeleton.
And we should note, the sources aren't condemning these alternative diets outright, but they are drawing a hard line in the sand about how they are implemented.
Exactly.
They must be developed and monitored in strict partnership with a veterinary nutrition professional.
You cannot wing it. The sheer scale of the animal magnifies any nutritional mistake.
And that sheer scale also magnifies behavioral issues around food. Food manners aren't just about having, a polite dog who doesn't beg at the table. When you are dealing with a highly food-motivated animal that weighs 150 pounds, manners are a critical household safety protocol.
Absolutely. A dog that size lunging for a dropped piece of chicken is a physical force of nature.
Yeah, they're huge.
If they're allowed to countersurf or aggressively grab treats from hands, they can easily knock over a toddler or severely injure a fragile adult.
It's just simple physics.
Right. Teaching a giant breed to wait calmly for their bowl, to take treats gently, and to respect physical boundaries in the kitchen is really about protecting the most vulnerable members of your household from accidental blunt force trauma.
Between the safety protocols, the shifting caloric math of the seasons, monitoring dental pain, tracking stool quality, and managing weight trends. Well, it is a staggering amount of data to keep track of for one animal over 10 or 12 years.
It is genuinely too much information to just keep in your head.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
The sources strongly recommend utilizing a dedicated system to keep this data organized. They actually highlight an app called VitalPet as a highly effective tool for this.
Nice.
Yeah, it allows you to log weight trends over time, track daily care routines, and keep all your specific veterinary recommendations in one accessible database. When a subtle drop in weight or a change in eating habits can signal a major medical issue, relying on your memories simply isn't sufficient. You really need the data.
So what does this all mean? When we look back at the entire lifespan we've just covered, the overarching theme is that the dog bowl is not just a chore to check off your morning to-do list. The bowl is the primary architectural tool we use to build the frame, the metabolic tool we use to maintain the engine, and eventually the medical tool we use to comfort the giant body of the Newfoundland.
It is the foundation of their entire existence. Every single decision you make about what goes into that bowl and how much of it goes in echoes throughout their skeletal structure, their organs, and ultimately their daily quality of life.
And that leaves me with a final thought I really want you, the listener, to mull over. Consider how deeply our own human psychology and our emotional connection to food influences how we care for our companions.
That's a really good point.
In human culture, we almost universally show love through abundance. We offer an extra treat to show affection. We fill the plate a little higher to be hospitable. We equate a full belly with a happy heart. But with a giant breed whose fragile joints are carrying the equivalent weight of a human adult, the greatest act of love might actually be restraint.
Wow, yeah.
The deepest, most profound care you can provide is having the iron discipline to feed them exactly what they need for optimal structural health and absolutely nothing more.
It demands a complete paradigm shift. Love isn't always offering more sometimes. True love is absolute precision.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the underlying mechanics of the Newfoundland Bull. But remember, building and fueling the body is only half the equation. Next time, we invite you to explore the next phase of this dog's life. How that carefully constructed massive body actually moves and operates out in the world.
And as a final reminder, the information and mechanisms discussed today are for educational purposes only. Always consult your veterinarian for any health, behavioral, or dietary concerns regarding your dog.
Because at the end of the day, you want that foundation to cure perfectly. You want the massive structure to stand strong, stable, and comfortable long after the initial building phase is over. We'll see you next time.